My ex-fiancé canceled our wedding and kept my apartment. A year later, I became his boss. There are moments in life that split your story into a before and after. For me, that moment was on an ordinary Tuesday, when I came back early from a business trip and found Michael, my fiancé of 2 years, in our bed, with Vanessa, my coworker from the marketing agency. Gabby, it's not what it looks like. He started with the most cliché line straight out of the cheater's handbook, while Vanessa scrambled to pull up the sheets. My Egyptian cotton sheets, to cover her naked body. But it was exactly what it looked like. And what came next was even worse. That day, Michael not only admitted to a 6-month affair, but coldly announced that our wedding, scheduled for 3 weeks from then, was canceled because he was moving on with Vanessa. When, through tears and in total shock, I mentioned that he would need to move out of my apartment, the one I bought with my grandmother's inheritance. Michael showed his true colors with a smirk I'll never forget. Technically, Gabby, my name is also on the deed. Legally, I have as much right to this place as you do. What he said next sent chills down my spine. You should have thought about that before putting my name on the paperwork. Consider this a valuable lesson about trust. In less than a day. Week, I lost my fiancé, my home, my job, and a good part of my dignity. What I didn't know at that moment, as I packed my things to move into my mom's tiny apartment, was that this total devastation was only the beginning of my story. Not the end. And that exactly 1 year later, on another ordinary Tuesday, I would be standing at the head of a conference room, watching Michael's face turn pale as he realized that his new boss was the woman whose heart and home he had stolen. The week following the betrayal felt like moving through molasses. Michael only left the apartment to grab some clothes, saying he would come back for the rest later. Vanessa stopped showing up at the office, asking for sick leave. Funny how guilt can make someone ill. 2 days after I found out, when I could finally stop crying long enough to function, I reached out to my best friend Taylor, a lawyer, to ask about my situation. He didn't contribute a single penny to this apartment, I explained, gripping a mug of tea that trembled in my hands. It was entirely paid for with the money my grandmother left me. I only put his name on the deed after we got engaged, as a gesture. Taylor sighed, her eyes showing the compassion her professionalism tried to hide. Legally, he's entitled to half, Gabby. You'd either have to buy out his share or sell the apartment and split the profits. Half of the apartment my family paid for? My voice cracked. How is that fair? It's not fair, she answered gently. It's legal. And from the way you're describing it, he's already spoken to a lawyer, probably before you even found out about the affair. The final blow came the following Monday, when I returned to work, desperately trying to hold on to some sense of normalcy. I was called into the director's office, only to find out that our biggest client, the account I was mainly responsible for, had requested to work exclusively with Michael and Vanessa from that point on. They claim you've been emotionally unstable, my boss explained, clearly uncomfortable. They said they got that information from internal sources. I walked out of the office that afternoon with a hastily written resignation letter and a box containing the plant that used to sit on my desk, a gift from Michael on our first anniversary. Just a week earlier, I had a fiancé who loved me, a dream apartment, and a rising career. Now, at 31, I was unemployed, homeless, and sleeping on the pull-out couch in my mom's tiny one-bedroom apartment in a far-off suburb of Chicago. That night, curled up under a blanket while my mom slept in the next room, I scrolled through Instagram, only to see a freshly posted photo, Michael and Vanessa toasting with champagne at the counter of my Pione's kitchen. The caption reading simply, "New beginnings, new home." The glass she was holding was part of the set I had received at my bridal shower. It was the first of many nights I cried myself to sleep. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. My routine became depressing and predictable, waking up late, half-heartedly sending resumes for jobs I was overqualified for, and spending hours obsessively checking Michael and Vanessa's social media. Every photo of them in my apartment. Every check-in at fancy restaurants, which I assumed were paid for with the commission from the client they stole from me, felt like reliving the betrayal over and over again. Sweetheart, You need to stop looking at that," my mom, Lucia, would say gently as she brought me tea at the little breakfast table. "You're torturing yourself." I knew she was right, but I couldn't stop. Seeing Michael living his best life while mine was falling apart felt like some cosmic injustice my mind just couldn't process. Taylor tried to convince me to fight for the apartment. "We can file a lawsuit claiming that adding his name was done under false pretenses," she argued during one of our calls. "With what money, Taylor?" I shot back. "I'm unemployed. He has my apartment, my job, and my biggest client. A lawsuit would just leave me more in debt." Job interviews became exercises in humiliation. The marketing world in Chicago was small enough that my reputation, or rather, the version of it created by Michael and Vanessa, got there before I did. "We heard you had issues at your last position," one recruiter hinted awkwardly. "We're looking for emotionally stable people for our team," another one commented. "We can't risk instability with major accounts," a third explained. Each rejection dragged me down further. I started believing the lies they told about me. Maybe I was unstable. Maybe I did deserve to lose everything. Maybe I should just accept that people like Michael and Vanessa always win, and people like me always end up sleeping on their mom's pull-out couch at 31. The lowest point came on a Sunday night, 3 months after the betrayal. I had sent out over 80 resumes, gone through 12 interviews, and received 0 offers. My savings were nearly gone. The bank was pressing for a decision about the apartment. And that night, scrolling through Instagram against my better judgment, I saw a picture of Michael down on one knee proposing to Vanessa. On Maya Terrace, with the ring that was supposed to be mine. I turned off my phone and cried until there were no tears left. When I finally looked up, I saw my mom sitting quietly at the edge of the pull-out couch. "Am I done?" I asked, mortified that she had witnessed my breakdown. "Only if you decide you're done," Lucia replied, her voice calm but firm. "When your father left us and I was alone with a 5-year-old girl and debts that weren't mine, I also thought my life was over. You know what I found out, Gabriella?" I shook my head, wiping my tears away with the sleeve of my pajama top. "I found out that we, women, are like water. When we hit an obstacle, we don't keep smashing into it, hoping it'll move. We find another way. We go around. We flow. And eventually, even the hardest stones give way to water's persistence." She held my hands in hers, rough and calloused from years of working hard as a high school teacher. "You can allow yourself to cry for a while, girl, but you can't afford to give up. The best revenge is not getting back what you lost, but building something better from the ruins." That night, something changed inside me. The water that had only been tears began to turn into a current, slow at first, but with the potential to become an unstoppable force. The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in months. Instead of checking social media, I opened my laptop and created a document titled Rebirth Plan. It sounded dramatic, but I needed something that symbolized a complete break from months of self-pity. First item, I typed, "Stop chasing what I lost and focus on what I can create." I spent the whole morning researching digital marketing trends and realized that, while I had been paralyzed by pain, the market was evolving fast. Advanced data analysis and storytelling based on metrics were transforming the industry, exactly the areas Michael had always considered too complicated. And Vanessa thought were boring. Instead of continuing to send out resumes for positions similar to the one I had before, I decided to invest my last savings in an intensive course on data analytics applied to digital marketing. It was risky, but standing still was a guaranteed failure. "Are you sure about this?" my mom asked when I explained my plan. "It's pretty much all you've got saved." "Absolutely sure," I replied, feeling a conviction I hadn't experienced in a long time. Sometimes you have to bet everything to change the game. The next 3 months were exhausting. I studied 12 hours a day, switching between the online course and freelance projects I accepted for way below market rates, just to build a new portfolio. I slept little, basically lived on coffee and quick sandwiches, and my only constant companion was my mom's old cat, who seemed fascinated by the glow of the computer screen. To keep the bills paid, I started working part-time at a local coffee shop. It was a job I never imagined doing with a college degree and years of experience, but there was something freeing about a job that ended when I walked out the door. No late-night emails, no office politics, no betrayals. "I've never seen you this focused," Taylor commented during one of our rare coffee meetups. "I'm rebuilding," I replied simply. "Not just my career, but who I am." I started a blog analyzing digital marketing campaigns, not just stating the obvious, but breaking down data and identifying patterns others didn't see. My first viral post was a detailed analysis of why a $1 million campaign from a major brand had failed, with numbers, graphs, and a narrative that made data analysis accessible even to beginners. "You can see the story behind the numbers," an influential industry follower commented. "That's a rare talent." That was exactly the skill Michael had always belittled during our relationship. "Numbers are just numbers, Gabby. What sells is the pretty presentation, not the boring analysis," he used to say while I was secretly refining strategies based on the very data he ignored. 6 months after starting my transformation, my blog had thousands of followers in the industry. I was getting invitations to speak at marketing events, which I couldn't accept yet because I didn't have the resources to travel. And my freelance projects were finally paying enough to help with my mom's household expenses. That's when I received an email that would change everything. "Dear Ms. Martinez, your article on the intersection of data analysis and emotional storytelling in digital campaigns caught my attention. I would like to discuss potential opportunities at Reynolds Media Group. Sincerely, Diane Reynolds, CEO." I reread the email 5 times to make sure it wasn't a mistake. Diane Reynolds was a legend in the communication world, a visionary who turned a small family agency into one of the largest media conglomerates in the country. And she had read my blog. Our meeting, scheduled for a quiet coffee away from downtown, was supposed to last 30 minutes. It stretched into 3 hours. Diane wasn't just impressed by my technical analysis, but by the story I shared when she asked why I had left my former agency. "You turned a personal and professional betrayal into fuel for innovation," she noted. "That's exactly the kind of resilience and unconventional thinking we need." I walked out of that cafe with an offer to become a strategic consultant at Reynolds Media Group, with a salary that far exceeded what I had earned before, and, more importantly, with the opportunity to develop new models of analysis and strategy without the shadow of my past. The night I signed the contract, sitting at my mom's kitchen table, she watched me with eyes shining with pride. "See?" she said softly. "Water always finds its way." My first day at Reynolds Media Group felt like stepping into another universe. The office spanned 3 floors of a skyscraper overlooking Lake Michigan, glass walls allowing natural light to flood into collaborative workspaces, and the air nearly pulsed with creative energy and purpose. "Your station is over there," said Adrian Wells, the senior manager Diane had assigned to guide me. But honestly, most people work wherever they feel most productive: meeting rooms, common areas, even the terrace when the weather's nice. That flexibility was the complete opposite of the rigid hierarchy at my former agency, where even the size of your desk was dictated by your position on the org chart. Here, ideas mattered more than titles. In the weeks that followed, I dove headfirst into the work, analyzing campaigns, refining strategies, and developing a new methodology that combined data analysis with psychological insights into consumer behavior. It was the most challenging and rewarding work I had ever done. "You've brought a completely fresh perspective to our approach," Diane remarked during one of our weekly check-in meetings. "The clients are noticing the difference." 3 months after joining the company, I received my first performance bonus, enough to put a down payment on a small but charming apartment of my own. The place was smaller than my previous one, with just 1 bedroom and a tiny balcony, but it represented something much more meaningful: independence earned entirely through my own merit. "I'm going to miss you," my mom said as she helped me unpack books onto my new shelf. "But you have no idea how proud I am to see you rebuilding your life." I was finally starting to feel in control again when Diane called me in for a confidential meeting that would change everything once more. The conference room on the top floor, usually reserved for VIP clients, was empty except for the two of us and a thin folder sitting on the glass table. "Gabriella, you've exceeded all expectations these past few months," Diane began, her tone more formal than usual. "That's why I want to share something important and offer you a unique opportunity." She opened the folder and slid a document toward me. It was an acquisition report. Reynolds Media Group was expanding and had acquired several smaller agencies to strengthen its presence in regional markets. My eyes froze on a familiar name halfway. Down the page, Allen & Partners, the agency where Michael and Vanessa worked. "We're restructuring Allen's digital marketing department," Diane explained. "We need someone strong to take over as director and implement our methodologies, someone who understands both data and people. Are you ready to lead a team?" The was. Initial shock gave way to a dizzying realization. If I accepted, I would effectively become Michael and Vanessa's boss. The universe was offering me a nearly cinematic chance for revenge. Diane noticed my hesitation and leaned slightly across the table. "I know about your history with 2 employees from that agency," she said calmly. "I did my research before acquiring the company. And to be completely transparent, that personal knowledge is a bonus, not a drawback. You know the weaknesses of the operation from the inside." I took a deep breath, trying to gather my thoughts. "I have ethical concerns," I admitted. "I don't want to make decisions based on personal history." Diane nodded, a small smile forming at the corner of her lips. "That's exactly why you're the right person for the job," she replied. "But I'll be honest. Leadership often means managing complicated people and uncomfortable situations. If you can't separate the personal from the professional in this specific case, maybe you're not ready to lead at all." That night, sitting on the small balcony of my new apartment, watching the city lights, I called Taylor. "This is straight out of a movie." She laughed after I explained the situation. "The question is, what kind of movie do you want it to be? A petty revenge story or a story of triumph?" "What if it's both?" I asked, half joking. "The real question isn't whether you should take the job," she said, her voice turning serious. "The real question is, what kind of leader do you want to be? Someone defined by revenge or someone defined by excellence?" Before going to bed, I texted my mom. "Remember when you said that water always finds its way? I think the river is finally reaching the sea." The next morning, I accepted the position. The day of my introduction as the new director of digital marketing at Allen & Partners was meticulously planned. I asked Diane and HR to keep my identity confidential until the official announcement, not for the drama, but to avoid early gossip that could jeopardize the transition. I carefully chose my outfit, a tailored and navy blue suit, my hair pulled back in a sleek bun, subtle yet flawless makeup. I wanted my appearance to convey confidence and authority, especially considering that the last time Michael and Vanessa saw me, I was emotionally shattered. "Good luck today." Taylor messaged me that morning. "Remember, the best revenge is success." I arrived at the agency 30 minutes before. The all-hands meeting scheduled for 9 a.m., Allen & Partners' office was familiar. I had visited Michael there many times during our relationship. But now, I was no longer a guest. I was the new director. Kevin Parker, the head of human resources overseeing the transition, greeted me at the entrance. "The staff is eager to meet the new leadership," he said as he walked me down the hallway. "The news about the acquisition has everyone on edge." At exactly 9 a.m., I walked into the conference room, where the entire 25-person team was waiting. The room fell silent instantly. I quickly scanned the faces until I found the 2 I was looking for. The exact moment Michael saw me was priceless. His eyes widened, and the color drained from his face as if he had seen a ghost. Beside him, Vanessa visibly choked and spilled coffee all over her white blazer. If I hadn't been so focused on keeping my composure, I might have laughed at the scene. "Good morning, everyone," I began, my voice firm and professional. I'm Gabriela Martinez, the new director of digital marketing, following the acquisition by Reynolds Media Group. I look forward to working with each and every one of you during this transition. For the next 40 minutes, I delivered a flawless presentation about Reynolds' vision for the agency, the new methodologies we would be implementing, and the evaluation process that all positions would go through in the coming weeks. At no point did I let my gaze linger on Michael or Vanessa any longer than on anyone else. Some of you may know me from previous contexts, I said calmly at the end, glancing briefly at Michael and Vanessa. I want to assure you that all my decisions will be based solely on merit, performance, and alignment with the company's new strategic direction. After the meeting, as employees began to disperse, Michael did exactly what I knew he would. He tried to approach me privately in the hallway. With a forced smile and eyes that betrayed a thinly veiled panic, he came over as if we were old friends. "Gabby, what an incredible coincidence," he exclaimed with fake casualness. "I always knew you'd go far. Maybe we could grab lunch one of these days and catch up on old times. I'm sure we can leave the past in the past." His falsely warm tone contrasted with the visible sweat on his forehead. I kept my expression neutral and my response professional. "Michael, our relationship is now strictly professional," I replied, my voice calm but firm. "I expect detailed reports on your current accounts by tomorrow at 9 a.m., and I will be evaluating all team members by the same objective standards. And please, it's Gabriela or Ms. Martinez in the workplace." I walked away before he could respond, feeling stronger with every step. For a brief moment, I allowed myself to savor the stunned look on his face. Not out of revenge, but as confirmation of how much I had grown since he left me shattered a year ago. Back in my new office, I found a small vase of white orchids and a card from Diane. "Remember, true leaders don't rule through fear or favoritism, but through unwavering excellence. Show them how it's done." I placed the card in the drawer, took a deep breath, and got to work. The real test was still ahead of me. The following weeks tested my resilience and professional ethics in ways I had never imagined. I led rigorous evaluations of the entire team, analyzed past campaigns, and set new performance standards. What I discovered surprised me. There were incredible talents within the agency who were either underutilized or completely overlooked. Why were these ideas never implemented? I asked Adrian during a review of archived proposals I had found on the server. "Office politics," he replied quietly. Certain people had preferences about who got credit and opportunities. I didn't need to ask who those certain people were. The evidence was everywhere. Brilliant proposals from junior employees filed away while mediocre ideas were approved. Young women consistently assigned to administrative rather than creative work, a culture of favoritism that stifled innovation. Pikey. First major action was to implement a fully transparent evaluation system. Every idea would be presented anonymously in initial creative meetings, to be judged solely on its merit. I also established clear processes for credit attribution and promotion, eliminating the informal who you know system. "You're really shaking things up," Kevin from HR remarked during our weekly meeting. "I'm just leveling the playing field," I responded. The team's reaction was surprisingly positive. People who had worked quietly for years suddenly found their voices and received recognition. A renewed energy filled the office, except, of course, in the corners occupied by Michael and Vanessa. They reacted very differently to the new dynamic. Vanessa, realizing the tide had turned, tried to adapt, working harder, contributing in meetings, trying to impress. There was genuine competence behind her manipulative persona, something I had to reluctantly acknowledge. "Your competitor? Analysis for the Johnson account is well structured," I commented during a project review, keeping my tone strictly professional. The shock on her face at receiving genuine praise was almost comical. "Thank you, Gabriela," she replied, testing the new formal dynamic between us. Michael, on the other hand, resorted to the same tactics he had once used against me: subtle sabotage attempts, condescending remarks in meetings, small acts of insubordination. He clearly expected either special treatment or explicit punishment because of our past. Receiving the same professional, impartial treatment as everyone else, seemed to completely throw him off balance. The breaking point came 6 weeks after I arrived. I discovered that Michael had been actively undermining my authority with a major client, Nexus Technologies, an account that he and Vanessa had inherited from me at our former agency. She's new in the role. He had written to the client in an email that was accidentally copied to our support team. She doesn't know the account like we do. If you want to maintain quality, keep dealing directly with me. I was faced with a significant dilemma. It would have been easy to fire him on the spot. I had both the justification and the authority. Part of me, still scarred by betrayal, wanted that satisfaction. But another part, the leader I was becoming, knew that could be seen as personal revenge, potentially undermining my credibility as director. What would you do? I asked Diane during our weekly check-in, presenting the situation without revealing the identity of the employee in question. She studied me for a moment. If it were just a performance issue, I'd give them a chance to correct it. If it's a matter of integrity, she paused meaningfully. Those rarely get fixed with second chances. After careful reflection, I chose a third way. Instead of firing him on the spot, I meticulously documented his mistakes and scheduled a formal meeting with him and HR representatives. I presented solid evidence of his professional failures, gave specific feedback on what needed to improve, and laid out a performance plan with clear goals and deadlines. You have 30 days to show significant improvement in these areas. I explained calmly, ignoring his indignant expression. Your continued employment here depends solely on your professional performance, nothing else. When Michael tried to imply that I was acting on personal motives, I simply slid a copy of the email to the client across the table. This isn't personal, Michael. It's an issue of unethical behavior that harms the company. Any employee would receive the same treatment under these circumstances. After he left, Kevin from HR remarked, "You handled that more fairly than most would have, considering. He stole my apartment, canceled our wedding, and tried to destroy my career." I finished with an ironic smile. Maybe, but I'm not here to settle personal scores. I'm here to build an excellent team. Adrian, who had become a trusted ally, later commented, "The way you handled him, you gave him the rope and let him choose whether to hang himself or pull himself up." That night, sitting alone in my apartment, I realized I didn't feel the petty satisfaction I had imagined I would feel seeing Michael struggle. Instead, I felt something much stronger, a quiet certainty that my decisions were based on principles, not emotions. It was a kind of freedom, one he could never take from me again. Over the next 30 days, I watched as Michael wavered between genuine attempts to improve and relapses into self-destructive behavior. Some days he arrived early, participated constructively in meetings, and met his deadlines. On others, his old arrogance resurfaced, especially when he thought no one was watching. Vanessa, surprisingly, chose a different path. After an initial evaluation, where we honestly discussed her strengths and weaknesses, she seemed to make a conscious choice to adapt to the new reality. Her work steadily improved, and she gradually stopped being the woman who stole my fiancé, and became simply a competent colleague with whom I share a complicated past. "You're good at this," Adrian remarked one afternoon as we reviewed campaign metrics, separating personal from professional. "I had good teachers," I replied, thinking of my mother and Diane. When Michael's 30-day deadline expired, the results were clear. Marginal improvement, but not enough. He met some goals, ignored others, and continued trying to bypass the hierarchy with clients. In our final evaluation meeting, I faced a man I barely recognized, not the Michael I had fallen in love with, nor the calculating villain who betrayed me, but someone in between. Insecure, defensive, and afraid. "Are you really going to fire me?" he asked, his voice wavering between disbelief and desperation. "After everything we've been through?" I stayed firm, but not vengeful. "I'm not firing you for what you did to me personally, Michael. I'm firing you because you failed to meet the clearly defined professional standards. I slid the performance report across the table. That distinction matters to me, and it should matter to you too. For a brief moment, I saw a flicker of recognition in his eyes, maybe the first time he truly saw me as the competent professional I had always been, not just the devoted fiancé he thought he could throw away without consequences. I really screwed up, didn't I? He said, more to himself than to me. You made your choices. I replied simply. I made mine. After I left the office for the last time, I didn't feel the euphoria I had imagined. Just a sense of closure, like turning the last page of a book that once meant a lot but was now ready to be placed back on the shelf. 6 months after taking over as director, our department had completely transformed. We implemented innovative strategies that attracted major new clients, and the toxic culture gave way to a collaborative and creative environment. Diane was so impressed that she expanded my authority to include other divisions recently acquired by the group. You didn't just overcome the challenge, she said during our semi-annual review. You completely redefined it. One day, while reviewing reports in my office, I received an unexpected email. It was from Michael, sent from a personal address. Gabriella, I'm writing to let you know that I've found a new job in Seattle, and I'm finally selling my share of the apartment. I know I'm probably the last person you'd want to buy anything from, but legally I have to offer you the first right of purchase before putting it on the market. The price is below current market value. Consider it a small gesture of amends for everything that happened. I've realized a lot about myself over these past months. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that your integrity, as a leader, showed me everything I should have valued when we were together. Michael. After consulting with Taylor and my mom, I decided to buy the apartment back. Not to live in it, my new home, though smaller, was filled with positive memories I had built on my own. Instead, once I fully reclaimed it, I did a complete renovation and turned it into something entirely new. A space for a mentorship program I launched using part of my annual bonus, a center dedicated to young women starting careers in marketing and communications. From Vision to Leadership was the name I chose for the program, focused especially on equipping women with both technical and emotional skills to navigate a field still dominated by unequal power dynamics. On the day of the center's opening, Diane showed up unexpectedly. Watching the young professionals gathered in the space, she remarked, "You turned a symbol of betrayal into a tool for empowerment. That says a lot about the kind of leader you've become." Vanessa, who had surprisingly become a valuable employee, eventually requested a transfer to another office, not due to performance issues, but for a legitimate growth opportunity. During our final meeting, there was an unexpected moment of honesty. "I'm really sorry," she said, the words clearly hard to say. "Not just for the affair, but for how I contributed to sabotaging your career." "Thank you for saying that," I replied, without offering explicit forgiveness but acknowledging the gesture. "I hope you use this new opportunity to define your success on your own merits, not at the expense of others." That evening, sitting on the balcony of the center with my mother, Lucia, I reflected on the past year's journey as we watched the sunset over Chicago. When Michael called off our wedding and took my apartment, I thought it was the end of my world, I confessed. I never imagined it would be just the beginning of something so much bigger. Lucia smiled, squeezing my hand. "Water always finds its way, remember? Sometimes we lose something good only to discover we were meant for something extraordinary." I looked at the group of young women inside the center, all of them full of potential and dreams, just like I had before the betrayal. But now with something I had lacked: mentorship and support. What was the hardest part? My mom asked after a moment of contemplative silence. I thought carefully before answering. It wasn't losing the apartment, or the job, or even the relationship. It was believing, even if only for a moment, that my worth depended on what he thought of me. One of the program's mentors approached us, offering glasses of champagne for a toast. I raised my glass toward the city lights, the same lights that once felt so intimidating when I was sleeping on my mom's pull-out couch. My ex-fiancé called off our wedding and took my apartment, thinking he was taking the best of me, But what he didn't realize was that he was simply making room for the stronger, more authentic version of myself to emerge. A year later, when I became his boss, the real victory wasn't the fleeting satisfaction of seeing his shocked face, but the unshakable certainty that I was no longer defined by what I had lost, but by what I chose to build from the ashes.